Good morning. Good afternoon. It's 12. Is it 12 or 11? I don't even know. I don't know if I'm coming or going. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good to be back online. Life has gotten so busy, and I used to go live on a consistent basis. I think someone was just asking me the other day, when does Dr. Faith go live? What day? So it's always going to be around 11 o'clock. It's either going to be Wednesday or Thursday. And like I said, it used to be much easier before just, things got really, really hectic because I love teaching. I love, talking with you guys and answering your questions and all of that. But it's just life is busy. So I'm excited to chat with you guys a little bit today on covenant relationships and just talk about how to discern those. I feel like that's something that's very important in this season. I feel like it's something that I talk about it a lot because I do believe in destiny helpers. I believe in divine connections. I believe in destiny relationships. So I'm going to talk about three types of relationships that every believer needs to have that I consider a destiny relationship. And then we'll go from there. So we're going to talk about friendships, right? People struggle with friendships. We're going to talk about friendships, and then we're going to talk about spiritual covenant relationships and what that looks like. And then we're going to talk about marriage. We're going to talk about covenant, intimate relationship. So those are the three areas that I feel like the Lord has really called us to all walk in and to master and to be able to help others in. So let's start with friendships. Well, let's start with defining covenant because I like to define words, right? It's an agreement. Covenant is an agreement that a person makes with another person to run together, to be in some sort of relationship for a period of time. Testament is the Latin word for covenant, and it contains it's divided. The New Testament, you look at the New Testament and the Old Testament, the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. Those are agreements, right, of the word of God that is spoken and that has been declared. And so when we talk about covenant friendships, right, we're talking about friendships that are not just friendships that are a good idea, but when you get in that friendship, you realize that there is something that is going on here. And if you look at covenant a little bit deeper, it is a formal, solemn, and binding agreement. That's the Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary. Binding agreement. So we're talking about covenant friendships, covenant relationships, and it's formal, it's solemn, it's binding. And what does that look like in a friendship? What does that look like with spiritual leaders and mentors and people God has called to run with you? What does that look like in marriage and in partnerships that God has put together? A great example in friendship is that what we see between Jonathan and David, right? It said that Jonathan loved David as his own soul, right? The word translated love here means a strong affection. It's not a sexual relationship, it's just a strong affection. David and Jonathan determined that they would be friends despite what it looked like, despite the hardships that David was going through with Saul's own father. So how do we discern destiny friendships, covenant friendships? Let's start there. Covenant friendships are first going to be people who have the same vision, who have the same passion and same direction. They're going in the same direction as you're going into. But a covenant friendship doesn't become covenant until there is an issue that both of you have had to go through, and you resolve to go through it and resolve to stick by each other past that past that issue. And so people that are spiritual, people are wise, they can discern a covenant moment right away. There's certain friends, that I have out there that as soon as I met them, I felt like there is something on this. This is not just about, me knowing this person. It's about us having the same vision and purpose. And so some of my covenant friendships, we've been friends for 15 years because we're both passionate about the prophetic, about purifying the prophetic, about the presence of God, about the glory of God. And so that thing that we agreed on is the thing that caused us to walk in covenant. And so it doesn't matter how many years we haven't talked, how many hours we haven't talked. When we get together, there is a binding agreement that we are both in this thing for the same purpose. Then I have other covenant friendships that are more for my well-being. They're not super spiritual, but I need somebody who knows me for me. They don't know me as Dr. Faith or Pastor Faith or this person, but they're willing to see my weaknesses and idiosyncrasies and still honor the gift on my life, but keep it straight, keep it 100. That is a covenant relationship. You cannot have a covenant friendship if you're both unbelievers. If one of you is an unbeliever, it's part of that being equally yoked, right? So even in friendships, your friendships should be equally yoked. Now, you can have unbelievers who are in covenant, because covenants are not just for believers. There's demonic covenants, there's diabolical covenants. People make an agreement to take one person down, and they do all that they can to take that person down. So you need to think about the friendships in your life, that when you think about 10 years from now, 15 years from now, you're going to be going in the same direction because you both have a love for God, you both have a love for ministry or business or families, or you both want to, homeschool your children. Like, you have these things that you come into agreement with, and you're saying, no matter what happens, I value what you bring into my life, and I believe that I'm supposed to bring into your life, and I'm going to be with you the long haul. Now, covenant relationships don't have to last 25 years, 50 years. There are some covenant relationships that are seasonal, that in that season, 3 years, 4 years, it was very intentional. So I had some covenant friendships in college, and we would pray together. We would do ministry together, and we helped each other. They helped me, I helped them. We knew we were to run together for those 4 years, and our heart was to run together even after that. But things happen, and it doesn't even make them less covenant now, but they were covenant in a particular season that helped fortify you and develop you. And that's why you can't say, well, that was my covenant friend, we were running together, and now because we have an issue, we don't talk anymore, right? Even with my friends from college, I can pick them up and talk, and we can find things to talk about. It's just being distant. It's just being living in different states. But I'm aware that this served a specific purpose in those 4 years. And so all of us are called to have covenant friendships, whether it's one, whether it's two. We identify them because we're headed in the same direction. We identify them because they bring meaning and value into our life. We identify them because the Lord has told us that there is something different about this person. This is not just somebody who you give up, who you cut off quickly. This is somebody that you go back and you talk to and you connect with and you work through those challenges. So that's on a friendship basis. Then you have covenant friendships on a spiritual basis. God will bring, and these are covenant relationships. They're not even friendships. So when we're talking about covenant on a spiritual basis, you're going to be thinking on two levels. These are going to be your destiny pushers and your destiny helpers. These are also going to be the people that God brings to help cover you, to help lead you, to help encourage you, to help correct you, to help shift you into your destiny. And so when you're thinking about a covenant relationship, this is beyond, oh, that person is my pastor, I go and listen to them Wednesday and Friday, and you love them and you have an affection for them. There are certain people that God's going to bring into your life that is going to be beyond, hey, I can listen to you once in a while. It's going to be, I need to find a way that I can get your phone number. I need to find a way that we have a direct connection. And this doesn't have to be your senior pastor. This could be a mentor. So right now, I'm in covenant relationship with several people that do not attend my church. I serve as their intercessors. I serve as their spiritual advisors. They agree that in this season, God has put me in their life to be that voice, to help counsel, to help direct them. And I agree, right? And usually with these covenant relationships, guys, it is supernatural. You're going to be having dreams. You're going to have this weird sense. You're going to have this feeling in your heart that this person is not just supposed to be somebody that I'm supposed to fly by and not think about. And so this happens with several people who have me as their covenant, whether it's spiritual mother, spiritual advisor, or whatever. They'll say, man, I kept dreaming about you. And in the dream, we were on a bus together and you were driving and I was sitting there and I was listening to you talk, or I dreamt about you and da 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 da. God will tell you over and over when it comes to spiritual covenant relationships. If you don't dream, he may have other people, or you may just have a knowing. And that's why it is important that you know how to hear God's voice when it comes to covenant, because you can miss it if you don't listen clearly. You can miss it if it doesn't look like this is, well, I was hoping for Sarah Jakes and now you're talking about Dr. Faith. Like, what does that even mean, right? Like, if you have a set idea of what your covenant partnerships and your relationships and leaders are supposed to look like, you may miss it. So my pastors, they're both, they're apostolic and a pastor. And of course, they're prophetic because they hear from the Lord, but they're not necessarily prophets. And so if I was I'm a prophet and I need to be around prophets and prophets can be no, you're going to miss it. Which, by the way, I tell prophetic people all the time, y'all need pastors. You need people that can deal with your soul. And you need apostles to help you get your life together, right? If you're just around other prophets all the time, it's going to be a hot mess. But when you're talking about a spiritual connection, not only do you come alive when they talk, not only do when they preach or they share a word, it resonates in your spirit. This is the other thing. You have this extraordinary love for them, and you're like, where did this come from? Why do I love this person like this? Where did this come from? I'm telling y'all, when God brings certain people to me that I'm supposed to walk spiritually in covenant with, or he assigns me as an intercessor to them, and I don't take a lot of these assignments because I have to hear from the Lord. The Lord gives me this supernatural love for them, like supernatural, because covenant relationships are going to go through storms and they're going to go through difficulties. They're going to go through hardships. And you have to know that it is beyond your feelings and your emotions, right? My covenant best friend is on the line right now. We live in two totally different states, but it doesn't matter. If 3 months pass by, one of us is going to be texting like, what the heck is going on? Because we understand that this is just, it's beyond just having a girlfriend. This is someone who's assigned to walk alongside me with life. And so we've talked about covenant friendships, and then you got to think about your covenant spiritual relationships. And this looks like pastors. This looks like spiritual parents. This looks like intercessors. This looks like mentors. And these are people that you believe that God is bringing into your life to either sharpen you, to take you to the next level, to walk with you, to correct you, to love you. And what you're going to feel is that love that is supernatural. And you're not just going to want to take from them. This is one of the differences between a church member and a spiritual child, right? Church members love going to church. They may serve on a team or not. They love the word, but they're not necessarily thinking about what the pastor needs. They're not necessarily thinking about how they can help their pastor or help their department lead or help their team lead. It is beyond what they get, and they're thinking about how can they give. I just made a post right now that I have never had a covenant spiritual pusher, right? Whether it is a mentor, whether it is a pastor, that I did not want to give something to. In seasons where I didn't have any money, I'd be like, how can I help? How can I clean your house? What is it that you need? It wasn't me just waiting on the other side for them to call and give me a prophetic word and give me correction, right? The times when I have less time and a little bit money, I give them birthdays up, anniversaries up, this is up. And it's not just I give to the church. I directly give to them. And let me give you guys this key. This is a favor key. If you want favor in your life, Find people that are walking in what you want to walk in and give what you can. Give of your time, give of your virtue, give of your money. And I know that some of us still have heart issues with money. So when we start talking about leaders and giving money, but there is something about identifying somebody who has the potential to take you to the next place, and you're sowing time, virtue, and money. And the other thing that that does is that it gets the attention of those people. Like, hey, this is not just an extraordinary, this is not just a member who loves this place, but they're doing something. The other thing I see is daughters that go over and beyond. Tiffany's on here, right? Every year, right, that we've had pioneers, most of the years, she will fly from her state, come, and even if it's just for 3 days, we see the level of effort that she's putting to stay in covenant. You can't say, oh, well, I'm in a covenant relationship with that person, but they don't ever call me, they don't ever come and see me. But what are you doing in return? And I think when we think about covenant in a spiritual sense, we're just thinking about our spiritual mother, father, or our mentor, our coach, and what they can do for us. But covenant is mutual. It is mutual. Both of you guys are bringing something to the table. I can't bring my pastors necessarily spiritual direction, even though they honor me in the graces that I have and the prophetic mantle that's on my life. But there are other things I can give. So if they're like, I want to take a course, I'm like, here it is for free. I would never. I mean, it boggles my mind. I mean, there's some people I know. Your pastors literally have to pay for everything that you do. You make cakes, and you have never thought to say, let me give my pastor a cake, or my mentor a cake, or my advisor a cake, right? Like, even things that are within your purview, they're sitting there giving you time, effort, and courage. So I just wanted you to understand that spiritual agreements and spiritual covenant relationships are symbiotic, and you're receiving spiritual or ministry or marriage directorship or guidance, but there is something that you're also pouring into that. And this is the other thing, you guys have to be in agreement. So I've had years where people are like, well, you are my spiritual mother and I expected you to do this and do that. I'm like, wait, I was your what? We never had a conversation. You never sat down and said, hey, I see you as a spiritual mother. I want you to be in my life, in all of my life. I want you to encourage me and to correct me. And I want to be able to call you when I'm having those tough seasons. Don't assume that someone is a covenant relationship and y'all haven't had those discussions, right? You go from mentorship to coaches to pastors, and then you have some people. And like, once again, don't go to your pastors don't have to be the ones that are your covenant spiritual voices, right? It would be great if they're in your church, right? So that you're all hearing the same things and all of that. But we have a bunch of spiritual mamas and spiritual fathers in our church, and some of them just click better with those other people. So they're not necessarily going to be calling me, but those other people are mature enough to call me when they call them and they're in some sort of bind. They'll say, Dr. Faith, this is what's going on with so-and-so. I've been mentoring, I've been spiritually mothering this person in the church. And don't do this. Don't be in a church and you're collecting spiritual children, and you're part of that church, and your pastor has no idea what's going on. You're having meetings and you're all, oh, these are my spiritual children. These are my, no. Those are your pastor's spiritual children. Their pastors are going to be held accountable for their souls. But if it's an apostolic church, a fivefold model church, they understand that they cannot do it all. And so what they do is they give authority to people within the house to be able to develop and lead other people. So if you have spiritual children, they call you mama and all these things within a house, right? Make sure that your pastors know your collection of spiritual children. Make sure that they know how you're mentoring them and developing them. And then, of course, you're going to have those people that you are part of a church, you honor the leadership, you're serving there, you're pastoring there. If you have a spiritual mother, spiritual father, spiritual mentor, whatever, outside of the church, it is your job to tell your pastors and say, you know what, guys, I love being here. The word is keeping me alive. This has been my spiritual mother even before I came here, and I want to keep her in my life. I want to keep her in a corner, because you can have a council, a team of counselors, 3 or 4. I wouldn't go beyond that. Some of y'all got 12. Some of y'all got how many? But it would be wise for them to know about each other. It'd be wise to know, okay, well, this person is part of our ministry here. They love it here, but I know that they're also talking to Brother Eddie, who leads that para ministry, and they consider him their spiritual father. Those things are so important within the context of agreement, and you cannot have agreement. Our therapist wise counsel, they're wise counsel, but they're not covenant relationships. If you have a covenant relationship with your therapist, then they're blurring lines and you're blurring lines. Covenant relationships mean you can see every part of me at any point. You have access to me. You can walk with me. Therapists should be for 6 weeks, literally 6 weeks. Some of them can be for 12 weeks. And then you have 3 years, 4 years. It can go longer. But ideally, when we were trained as therapists, you're trying to get somebody in work consistently with them 6 to 12 weeks, let them go and let them live their life. All right. So they can be wise counsel, but they can't necessarily be covenant relationships, because that is a dual relationship. It's unethical. It's unhealthy. And then the last one, which I know you guys all love, then I'll take your questions, is destiny relationships when it comes to spouses, right? And so we have destiny friendships, and some of us have destiny friendships with men or women. So my best friends are all guys. They all got married before me, right? Of course, my husband being the best friend. But I'm getting ready to go to be with Apostle Brian Meadows this weekend. My other friend, Brian Williams, we've been running together for years and years. And I was praying for them to get married. Well, Brian was always married. He'd been married a long time. Him and Patrice been married 20 years, right? But they're covenant friends, because we say, you know what? We're all called to build the kingdom. We're all called to pastor. We're going to do this thing together. We're going to help counsel each other. We're going to help correct each other. We're going to help encourage each other. We're going to sow into each other's ministries, right? And so you can have people of the opposite sex that are covenant friendships. The problem is some of us are so immature. We think that a covenant friendship is somebody we're supposed to date, is somebody that we're supposed to marry. And so that's why it's really important that you're clear about why you're friends and why you should be in covenant. If we're all builders, the assignment here is to build together. It's not to fall in love. It's not to all of this, right? This is the other thing. If you are married and you have a friend that has been a covenant friendship, that friend should now become your spouse's friend. Every chat that I have with my brothers, my husband is in that chat, right? Because I'm not leaving him out there just because he came later. I knew them before him. That's dumb, right? And so your covenant relationships with people of other sex, they don't have to end because now you're married. I've seen people say, well, I can't talk to anybody anymore because I'm now married. And usually it's the person that is insecure telling them that. But how you do that is you bring them into the friendship. You bring them into the friend circle. You prioritize them. You tell them, hey guys, we've been running for a long time, but so-and-so is going to be running with us. And if it's truly covenant, that is not a big deal. That is not a big thing. Okay. So how do you know a destiny relationship when it comes to marriage, right? So obviously, I've written a whole book on this. It's called Journey to the Altar. You can pick it up on Amazon or on my website, get the electronic version there. The first thing that you're looking at is, what are we in agreement about? We are in agreement that we both love God and we want to live for God, right? That's the biggest thing that God is looking for. You both love God, you love God more than each other, and you both want to live for God, and you're not going to let the other person not allow you to not live for God. Once you're clear about that, the next level of covenant that you're going to be talking about if you're thinking of a potential spouse is mission and mandate. When we talk about mission and mandate, it doesn't mean that both of you have to be teachers or both of you have to be in the entertainment industry. Both of you have to be, stockbrokers. No, what it means is when we make our money, however way we make it, what do we want to do with it? What are the things that we want to do for the kingdom of God? So your careers don't have to be the same. And even your assignments in the kingdom of God don't have to be the same. So you could have one that says, I want to pastor a church, but the spouse says, you know what? I'm a lawyer. I want to work in corporate and I want to, do big cases. Okay, that's great. I'm going to help the church. The lawyer is going to attend. The lawyer is going to help. He's going to help with the paperwork, is going to help make sure the organization is set up, right? And then the money that they make together, they're going to talk about, okay, what are the areas in the kingdom do we fuel into? So they have agreement when it comes to mission. They have agreement when it comes to mandate. That's the next thing that you're looking for. First thing, we both love God more than each other. We both want to serve God, and we're not going to allow anybody or anything to pull us away from that. And then third, we have agreement agreement on our vision. We have agreement on what we want to do with our lives. And sometimes it's the same thing, right? When I met my husband, he was a businessman, always wanted to do business. He loved God, served God, was going to build the kingdom. And then God told him to pastor. He said yes. And God told me to pastor. I said yes. So now we're doing that together. But now we're in business. We're doing two different businesses, but we have a big vision, right? We're building schools in Africa. We're getting ready to go there and roof some schools and bring desks and all of those things. That is the big mission. If a marriage and it doesn't have a mission, it will burn out. If a marriage doesn't have a mission, it will have nothing to live for. So when you guys are in disagreement, when you guys are having a hard day, going back to the drawing board of why we are together, that should be the thing that fuels you. That should be the thing that causes you to stay together. So covenant, marriage is the strongest covenant because there is no that should not be broken at any point. Friendships, spiritual covenants, they can be for 4 years, they can be for 20 years, they can be for 30 years, they could be, I wouldn't say for 6 months. A covenant friendship is long, but it doesn't have to be all of your life. A covenant relationship with a pastor, mentor, coach can be for several years, but it doesn't have to be all of your life, because covenant, you figure out what the mission is, why God has brought you together in that season. And when you have mastered that, then you can say, okay, now we're going to move to different places. But marriage is not like that. When you're in that covenant, it's an ironclad covenant. It's not like, oh, well, you want to do something else and I want to do something else, so we're going separate directions. In a marriage covenant, the goal is to become one every single day. You don't become one at the altar. You become one when you forgive each other. You become one when you work through challenges. You become one when you fight and then make up again. You become one when you're able to succeed and do great things that you both had dreamt about. And so that is a covenant, that is a lifetime covenant, and one that requires the most weight. So before I answer the questions, what do we have coming up this week? Our church is celebrating 8 years. So if you're local to the Wake Forest, Raleigh area, tomorrow night we have a healing prophetic worship night, and we're going to minister and we're going to see the glory of God. And then we have things going on all weekend, Family Fun Day Saturday, and service. We have our good friend Jason Side speaking. So that's happening. Second, if you are married and you are not in community with other covenant married couples, if you're married, you've got to have covenant friendships. You've got to have people who are more concerned about your marriage than you are, that are not letting you give up. And so we developed those friendships during our Eden marriage retreat. People have made best friends over the last several years. They have people running with them towards covenant. And so we have several spots left. It's happening in Cancun 2025. You would just need to put down a deposit and then they'll work with you for your payment plan. It's a 5-diamond star resort, which is the top tier of resorts. There's only, I don't even know, less than 50. And so we want you to join us for that if you're married. And then what else? Oh, Pioneers, VIP Day. All of that is opening up very, very soon. So if you haven't joined us in November for Pioneers and for VIP Day, get ready to register. VIP Day fills up. And so that's going to be coming up next week. All right, let me take your questions. If you have a question, drop it with the hashtag Q. If you don't put a Q, then I just know it's a statement. So drop your questions. Even if you're on Instagram, drop your questions in the chat. Don't put them in that little question thing. Just drop it, unless it's like super private. But drop them in the chat with the hashtag Q. Ruth says, I love Eden Marriage Retreat. Yes, and we love spending time with you guys, and we've grown in friendship even there. So would invite every married couple to invest in that. No one talks about spiritual warfare you go through while being engaged. Is it so much? Oh yeah, the devil hates marriage. The devil hates marriage, right? And so it's not going to happen the whole time. Let me tell you why people go through spiritual warfare in their romantic relationships. They go through spiritual warfare in the romantic relationships if they've stayed in one season too long. Write that down. You will go into spiritual warfare in romantic or even covenant relationships if you've stayed in a season too long. What do I mean? If you guys have been dating for a year and you should be getting engaged, but they're like, we want to date for 2 more years, I bet you by year 2, by year 3, you're going to begin to experience some extraordinary warfare. Why? Because you're in the dating phase too long. When people get engaged and God, I mean, they're like, okay, we should get married in 3 years from the engagement. That don't even make sense. It should be 6 months or a year, right? If you overstay the engagement phase, you're going to be in warfare because you're in a season that you're no longer graced for. If you've been dating someone and you're acting like wife and husband, but you're not wife and husband, you're in a season you're not graced for. And so then you begin to experience warfare. Now, when you say we're going to get married, all hell can break loose because the enemy is trying to convince you not to do it because he hates marriage. But that's why you need fortified counselors. You need other married couples around you. You need people who understand the process of how these things work. And this is the thing, the devil is not very patient. And so if you resist the devil, he will flee from you. And so if you can resist for 2 weeks, resist for 3 months, you will find that he will stop picking on you and your spouse because you have made a resolution that you're not going anywhere. It's the same thing that we tell married people. The D word is off the table. Divorce is not even an option. You don't ever say it out of your mouth. It is not an option because you're not giving any doors to the enemy. You're not giving any holes to the enemy for him to have access because he is constantly looking for areas of disagreement. And that's why we call it a covenant relationship, because you find what you agree on and you hold on to that. And so even in those seasons when you're married and it looks really, really horrible, you have agreed that marriage is good. You have agreed that God honors marriage. You have agreed that God is with you. And because of that, even though you may not understand each other, you feel like you're speaking two different languages, you're not going to give any room to the enemy. And so you fortify yourself and you make sure that you know how to walk in that. So these are some of the teachings and the tools that we give you guys at the Eden Marriage Retreat. And yes, singles, we're going to have something for you guys. We'll roll that out in the fall. And it's also going to be in the March, April time zone of the year. Will this be recorded? Well, all of my lives are up on my YouTube channel or my Facebook channel. All right. Question. I thought God had sent my husband. We were married for 6 months and he left 3 times so far and treats me poorly. He left 3 weeks ago and I don't think so. My biggest question, which is probably I know the answer, is did you guys go through marriage counseling? Did you go through marriage counseling? It's not the only thing that prevents things like this, but it's one of them. The second thing is, did you have outside confirmation? Did other people tell you that, yes, this is your husband, this is going to be wonderful? And then third, is he submitted to any leadership in his life? Does he have mentors? Does he have pastors that you can call and say, this is what he's doing? Lastly, did you go through inner healing? Because if he has wounds and he never dealt with those wounds and he got married, they're still going to show up. Marriage doesn't fix wounds. Marriage doesn't fix sins. But the thing is, when you enter into covenant, you're saying, I am with this person. Remember Hosea? God tells him to marry a prostitute. The prostitute is in and out, in and out. So do you love this person? Prayer, and are they willing to change? Because that's the other thing. They have to be willing to change. Okay. When the relationship is taxing, but you're learning spiritually, how do you go about boundaries? I don't know why it would be taxing. So are they asking you to do things? Are you serving too much? Or what is it emotionally taxing? But yes, you go about boundaries by saying, hey, I love that I'm growing here and I'm learning, but I cannot do this like this, or I cannot serve every single week. You got to figure out what the issue is and then clearly communicate to them. Now, if they don't honor your boundaries, then you got to ask, is this a healthy place for me to be in? All right. Yeah, excited about VIP Day. We're rolling that out this week. It's going to be amazing. First of all, Pioneers. It's happening November 14th through the 17th. The theme is Glory Carriers. The speakers are out of this world. I know every year we've been like, whatever. But this year, I am so excited. 1, at the diversity. 2, at the weight of the speakers. And then we're talking about glory. This is the signs and wonders. We want to press into the presence of God. So that is Pioneers. You'll see all that information rolling out as well. What are great questions to ask a potential partner or things you should do? Get my book, Journey to the Altar. It has a whole list of things that you guys can be going through, questions that you need to ask. You need to ask yourself. You need to ask your partner. It's on Amazon, or you can download the electronic copy off of our website, askdrfaith.com. To visualize this another way, are there examples in the Bible other than Jonathan and David? Yeah, so you can think of Naomi and Ruth. right? She's like, your people are my people. Where you go, I'll go. That was her spirit. That was her natural mother-in-law. But she was in covenant with her, and she was like, I am not about to leave you. We are going to do this together. And wherever you go, I'm going to go, and we're going to walk together. So that's what covenant looks like. Even some of the apostles and the decisions. Well, look at Peter. He denied Jesus, but he came back to him. Covenant. I'm not running. I tried to run, but I'm not running. I'm going to finish this thing all the way to the end. I'm going to walk with you all the way to the end. All right. Hosea and Gomer. God tells him, you need to be in covenant with this woman. And he's like, it's hard. She's crazy. She's out in the streets. But he honors the covenant that he made to God, which is what we do in marriage. We're not just honoring a covenant that we make to people. We're honoring the covenant that we made to God first, right? And then we work it through. Okay. Where will the pioneers be held? Hilton, North Raleigh. It's always in Raleigh, North Carolina. All right, let's see. Any other questions? Thanks, Danielle. Tell them to share. If this was helpful, please share. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you are not already subscribed. What if you had a dream about a man, but you're not in a relationship? However, the chemistry is strong. Where do I go from there? Ask the Lord to bring you confirmations. Talk to people that hear from the Lord and say, hey, I'm dreaming about this person. I feel like there's something there. What do you think? Can you pray with me, right? And then if the man is the chemistry is there, give him something to work with. Smile, show up where he's at, let him know that you're interested without letting him know that you're interested. So in Journeying the Altar, I talk about how men are to pursue and women are to position themselves. So as a lady, you can position yourself in front of someone and let them see that you are fun, you're engaged, you're interested in them. Ask them about their job, ask them about work, ask them about, they'll know, right? And they will feel confident because you're inquisitive enough and you're giving them room to be able to ask the questions. The marriage bed is undefiled. I've heard this explained differently. Are there things unholy in a marriage bed? So this is language for the Eden marriage retreat, right? We talk a little bit about it in the singles retreat as well. But we have whole sections on sex, and I'm going back and forth about doing a webinar on his needs and her needs. The marriage bed is undefiled. That means that whatever should be done in the marriage bed should not bring you shame and should not bring you pain. If it's bringing you shame and it's bringing you pain, then you're defiling the marriage bed. The other thing is you should not invite other parties into your marriage bed because you're defiling it, whether it's pornography, whether it's sex toys that help you get an orgasm without your spouse, you're defiling your marriage bed. So, like I said, this is the stuff we talk about at the marriage retreat, but I gave you guys a little bit of an in some of the thoughts that we have around that. How long after a divorce should you wait to start dating? I was married for 18 years to a man who responded to me as a narcissist. Well, was he not a narcissist year one? Right. So, and I'm saying this to say you were married 18 years. I don't know if you're saying you just realized that he's a narcissist. He probably was like that throughout the whole thing. Well, if you went through that for 18 years, I would say at least a year of counseling. I would take the time to heal my soul, to heal my psyche, to bring back all the disenfranchised parts, the parts that are all over, and bring them to disintegrated parts and heal. And then a year. But there's no time for this. It's different. But I do have concerns when someone gets divorced and it's been less than 6 months and they're already in another relationship. Dr. Faith, what are your thoughts on churches that try to control what is being spoken or taught in marriage ministry groups? I'm saying they're not in favor of the people having honest conversations, but more of like wanting it to be a Bible study setting. So is it their church? Like, is it the pastor saying in our marriage ministry, this is what we're going to teach? If that's the case, it's their church, right? They can have, they decide how they want to do their marriage ministry. It's their vision. It's what the Lord is calling them to do and how to do it. Now, if they're saying they don't want you participating in other marriage ministries because it's not a Bible study, then that's between you and the Lord, and maybe even your pastor, because I don't know how long you've been there, and I don't know the issues, and also the ministry that you're wanting to connect to, because every ministry that is out there teaching doesn't have sound doctrine and doesn't have sound whatever. But if it's fruitful and they're blessing people and there's testimonies of marriages healing and growing and thriving, then that's something that you're going to have to decide for what you need. But within a church context, it's the pastor's job to decide what is taught and how it's taught within everything. We review the curriculums from the kids all the way to all of our small groups, right? Our teachers get to pick them up, pick them out. They get to give us suggestions. We're open to suggestions, but we also get to review them and make sure they line up with our vision, mission, and what the Lord is saying. What is your Facebook channel? It's Dr. Faith Wolkomam. How do you know someone is called to be your destiny friend via acquaintance? I just went through all of that at the beginning, so please just watch the replay. How do you drop the handkerchief on Facebook so the man can see you're interested and pursue him? Like his pictures, go into his inbox and say, man, that sermon you preached was amazing, right? Like I know a couple right now, they're married because the husband went to her and said, I loved your YouTube, right? I loved how you taught that sermon, right? I know another couple, they're dating because someone said, hey, you have a really beautiful smile. And the other one said, you too. And they started talking. So you can give compliments. What is the dates for the singles? We don't have them yet, but they're going to be in March or April of 2025. Just make sure that you're joining us Labor Day weekend. We start our 21-day fast for marriages, families, singles, businesses, churches. We pray for 21 days. We'll have all of this information and we'll be rolling it out during that time. If it wasn't covenant and he wants to leave, is it okay to get divorced? No. Once you get married, it's covenant. Like that's it. You don't. Marriage itself is a covenant institution. So whether he says it wasn't or you don't feel like once you get married, you've entered something that's beyond you. You've entered into an ancient right that God created, not only for the procreation of children, but for the expansion of his kingdom. And that's why those discussions need to be happening before. Can people get divorced if there's affairs, if there's abuse, if there's neglect? Right? Of course, I'm not saying you're stuck for life, but a lot of what we see is irreconcilable differences from their perspective. And every person that I know that has been married 30, 45 years, 25 years, 27 years will talk about the hardships that they endured, but how their marriage is better because of it. Okay. Great. I'll take two more and then I gotta go. I have a client actually. I've been separated for 14 years. He's gay, but we're still married, and I've tried divorcing, but for some reason it always falls through. What do you mean it always falls through? Do you need money? Do you need a lawyer? Do you not show up to the court? Do you really want to be divorced? Right? I would talk to someone, talk to a lawyer, and work with them, because if you're still spiritually and naturally married, you are keeping out the person that God has for you, because someone else is taking that place, right? And so I would go get the help that I need to resolve that. The marriage bed is undefiled. Are there no's in the marriage bed? Yes, like I shared some of those. And I also have a whole teaching on this that you guys can purchase. It's a 10-week, it's part of our marriage counseling coaching training that we have for couples who are either getting married, newly married, or never, or need counseling. And I walk you through all of that. So there's a whole section on sex. You can pick it up. I don't know if my team can drop the link, and you can pick it up and watch the videos and work through the workbook and go from there. All right, I do gotta go. I have an appointment that's waiting for me. I look forward to talking to you guys. Marriage people, would love to see you at the Eden retreat. And the rest of you guys, I'll talk with you next week. Have a